Hello everybody, good evening because this is evening today here in Bangalore. I am in India and with me I have Pavan Soni here. He is a researcher and innovation evangelist. Let's learn what exactly that means from Pavan here. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for almost 1.5 years, more than a year now. And the very first time I met him, I was so enthralled by his presentation with full of facts and figures and statistics, and that's what made me a big fan of Pavan. And today let's see what he has got in store for us and what he means by innovation and how we can use this man's research to learn a few things from him today. Welcome to the show, Pavan.
Thank you.
Very good evening, first of all.
Thank you. Good evening to you.
Please let us know, what exactly is do you mean by innovation evangelism?
Yeah. So these evangelists were identified by the church to ensure that people start believing in Christianity. Now, how do you believe in God, for example? The only way you can believe in God is by the act of the nature or by the act of the God. Same applies to innovation. People by and large are very cynical about innovation. They often relegate innovation to the scientists or the artists. So they say either you have to be a real good scientist to be able to come up with something new, or you have to be an artist type to draw something new. But that is completely mistaken. I believe, and there is an enormous amount of science behind it also, that all of us are capable of innovation, similar to our capabilities of swimming.
Right.
So for example, everyone is born with the ability to swim. It's a different thing that people practice swimming and they become better at it, others just afraid of getting into the water at the first place. Same applies to innovation. So my job as an innovation evangelist is to percolate the belief substantiated with the facts and figures as you were talking about, to ensure that people start believing in the fact that they can be innovative too, at least to begin with they can be creative too, and then to demonstrate through cases, examples, stories, narratives, etc., that how exactly the people who go about innovation, they do this stuff. So that's what my job is, or aim is in life in large.
So who is the? You said everybody should innovate, but is this especially true for companies and especially startups? Because we have
Yeah.
been talking to a lot of startups in Bangalore and even in Silicon Valley. There's so many startups happening, and they're all talking about innovation. And most of these startups are also looking at or quoting the example of Steve Jobs, who is known for innovation, Apple. But do we have any other example of innovation and how anyone can apply innovation, or are there 3 steps to innovation? Is there anything like that you would like to suggest?
Yeah. So first of all, I would want to draw the distinction between innovation and creativity.
Right.
So oftentimes what happens is people use these words quite interchangeably. They use, overuse, and even often abuse
Abuse.
these terms. So creativity is an individual phenomena. So for example, if you think that this chair is shaking, you can have some creative means of stopping them from shaking. So that is your creativity. And all of us are endowed with the ability to be creative. Even animals are very creative in the way they make their nest. So creativity is a very fundamental human trait. Now that does not equate to innovation. Innovation, on the other hand, is typically a firm level phenomena. What I mean by firm level phenomena is that you can call anything to be innovative only if it is commercialized,
Okay.
which means that it has to traverse the distance from just being an idea in somebody's mind or a group's mind into getting a commercial utility out there in the market.
Right.
Now, if you look at ideas at large, not every idea is amicable to be commercialized.
Right.
Even if ideas get commercialized, several of the ideas don't fetch any money, and hence we do not deem that as innovative. Now, talking about startups, startups have this very unique position for themselves. The first ability of a startup is that unlike a large firm, startups typically does not have any baggage problem, which means that startups don't have to fend a territory. And if you look at some of the research by the likes of Clayton Christensen, Vijay Govindarajan, etc., they typically suggest that startups are more prone to disrupting the market at the first place, right? Because startups have nothing to fend for, whereas a large firm is so much invested into the status quo that they would somehow want to persist it as a cash cow. So if you look around yourself, some of the most innovative things, right from the cars by Tesla Motors, or the aircraft carriers by Bombardier, or the satellite launchers by Amazon, each of these companies have at one point in time or the other been a startup. And by being that startup, they have actually been able to challenge the dominant logic
Right.
or the dominant large firms, because these large firms often miss out on those interstices. Now, talking about this man Steve Jobs, which has largely been celebrated, there are several equivalents which we have in India too,
Yeah.
but the thing is that they have not been celebrated adequately. And I think with the kind of work that you are doing, one of the latent desires has to be to celebrate those success stories. I think we need more success stories. What this guy's genius has been is to identify those interstices or those gaps which have hitherto been overlooked by the dominant players. So, industry by industry, he has been able to challenge some of the dominant logics in the industry. For example, if you look at the media industry, he challenged the whole idea that why should somebody buy an entire CD which has 12 songs? Why can't I just buy a single song which I like? Why should I buy the 11 junk songs? Why can't these all 7 or 8 media houses come together and start selling these songs online?
Right.
Why can't I have a device which is portable enough and convenient enough to jack on to a internet and get the songs without necessarily pirating the songs? Why can't I listen to a music for about 45 seconds and then choose to buy a song for 99 cents? So these were some of the things that people in the industry for so long have not even questioned. So the beauty of the startups is that because they have nothing to lose, they can question the most fundamental of the things.
Right.
Now in India, not every kind of a startup or not every kind of an innovation could possibly thrive. So one of the mistakes that we often end up doing is that we start comparing our innovations with the Western innovations. So we often lament that why Indians are not good in product innovation. Why aren't we producing enough of Apple, Microsoft and Google? I think that's the wrong question to ask. The kind of innovation which is most amicable for Indian context are not necessarily product innovation, and definitely not the kind of product innovation that Apple comes up with, which is hardly accessible to the people at large,
To the masses, yeah.
to the masses, and which is the need of the hour primarily in our country.
Right.
And hence the kind of innovation that we need to and we ought to do it in India are mostly on the lines of business model innovations and process innovations. And what I mean by business model innovation is that are you able to take an existing product or an existing service which was meant for a particular segment of the market, which was hitherto inaccessible to the larger masses in India, and can you motivate and modify the product enough so that it is now accessible by either bringing the price points down, by adding certain other features, by changing the accessibility altogether. And that is the kind of innovation that we need in India. And this is the place, Bangalore is the place which is best suited when it comes to bringing those innovations to the market. And that's the ecosystem effect that we're talking about. So that's my take on innovation, creativity, jobs, and creating jobs through startups.
Right. So, what is going to be your message to the world? Like, what would you like?
So there are, if I were to really talk about my trajectory over the last few years that I have worked in the industry and now in our Bangalore campus, I strongly believe that there are three things that have propelled me to be doing what I'm doing. The first and the foremost thing is taking half chances.
Half chances.
Taking half chances.
Okay.
Now, what I believe is that opportunities don't come in a full fashion to you, completely wrapped up into you. We will unravel.
Often disguised.
Often disguised, right? So you need to identify the crack in the door through which you can sneak in and then explore larger world. Now, what happens is that because by and large our culture, Indian culture I mean to say, because our Indian culture is so much poised to inhibitions, so much poised to self-doubt, that oftentimes we miss out on those cracks in the door and small opportunities. So if you look at the trajectory of most of these startups and most of these leaders, they've all started with those opportunities which others just did not look at.
Right.
Columbus himself looked at the island was very much existing. He was the first one to make a sense out of it. So that's what I mean by taking half chances. So don't wait for the entire information to come to you, because by the time you wait for it, everyone else gets to know about it. So that's what I mean by taking half chances. The second message or the second trait which I strongly believe in has helped me by and large is this whole notion of being able to stretch yourself physically, intellectually, and in all possible faculties, because human beings by and large are endowed with infinite possibilities. Yesterday only I watched the movie Revenant.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and that is a nudge to all of us that whatever we are doing on any given day
Right.
is far less than our capability on that particular day, and that applies throughout our life. At any given point in time, we are grossly underutilizing our faculty, right? And that also leads us to start thinking about that, should I really limit myself to be doing just a few things? So for example, when I used to work in the industry,
Okay.
incessantly I used to spend my weekends going out to colleges, teaching, doing consultings on the sidelines. And when I am in the campus right now, I do not stop doing that. Whenever given a chance, I do not really ask too many questions: what will happen, where will it go to, what will I get out of it, etc. Let's take half chances. By taking those half chances, you actually start increasing your probability of success through multiple avenues rather than betting yourself onto that. So that is what I mean by taking half chances and stretching yourself. And the third element, which might sound very contradictory to what I have just said,
Right.
is the importance of conserving and converging your energy. Now, this might be at loggerheads to taking half chances, stretching yourself, and then conserving your energy.
How to do both at the same time?
Exactly. So, that is a paradox. Now, how do you crack the paradox? Now, if you look at us and if you look at the people who have survived before us, people are typically known for just one or two things which they have done well in their life when they die. I hardly know of people who are known for 10 great things which they have done,
Right.
right? Which means that if at our deathbed we'll be only known for those one or two things that we'll be doing in our life which we would have done better than others, then why not just focus our energy onto doing those one or two things great instead of doing 10,000 things?
Right.
And hence the importance of conserving and converging our energy onto doing those things with a pinpoint focus. And 35-40 years after our graduation till we hit retirement is too small a period to be doing something phenomenally different. But how do you reconcile these two things?
Yeah.
How do you reconcile converging your energy and yet being able to take half chances and stretching yourself?
Exactly.
The difference here is this, that like any idea, the starting point of an idea is always divergence, and then it results into convergence.
Okay.
Which means that when you're starting off your career, especially when you are into 30s or even 20s and mid 30s, I would say, you need to be really experimentative, because you should know of all the things that you end up doing, what is it that you do without any external motivation. And I believe that you will be extremely successful as a person, and that's my definition of a great career. A great career is when you continue doing things without any external motivation.
Perfect.
That's a great career. If you do things with a clear external motivation, that's not a career, at least not a great career. It's a job, it's an off job,
Right.
right? And often people call it as a passion, right? Hobby. Passion, hobby, and career, if they can converge into one, that is best. So that is what I mean by experimenting on the sidelines, to know that what else can I do with my given abilities, right? And in doing so, I end up making more abilities. But at the same time, I should be known for doing something which is phenomenally different, which is phenomenally unique to me.
Right.
And to sum up, I think we are sitting at this moment in time in this great campus. It's nothing more than luck. We are lucky. We are plain lucky. I don't think there is any fundamentally great thing that we have done in our lives, or we are fundamentally differently endowed, that we have the privilege of sitting here and having this conversation. We are lucky. Now, given that we are lucky, what do we do with that luck? That's up to us, right? So, if we can relegate our lives to just a few objectives, few guiding principles, and a discipline around it, I think we can do phenomenal things. That's my take.
Amazing, amazing. So I could relate this to the seminar that we were doing at Super Achievers Academy, and when I was talking to people, and they were like, we all talked about passion, purpose, and all these things, but then suddenly something like this came up. What is the meaning? Finally, so passion, purpose, profits, yes, everything is right. We need to have all these, but finally, if we know what's the meaning to what we are doing, if we attach the meaning, that is what, especially for me, that's what makes me get up from bed every day. If I have
The
meaning
purpose,
to something that I do, I don't need external motivation, as you said. It's totally intrinsic. I totally understand that. So, Pavan, what brought you to IIM here, and what is going to be your next steps from here? I understand that you are at the end of your dissertation, right? Okay, you're almost ready to give out a dissertation, right?
Yeah,
That's how you say
yeah, defend the thesis.
defend the thesis. Okay, very academic, right? So, what brought you to this thing, and then what's going to be your next steps from here?
Yeah, so the transition from a pure corporate world to the academic world was not overnight. As I told you before, that even when I used to work in the industry, I was an employee with Wipro,
Wipro,
right? So
okay.
6 years I worked there, and almost in all weekends I used to go out and teach. All weekends, because instead of hanging around at Forum or one of these malls,
Right.
why not go and teach? It was all pro bono exercises. I used to go out, do things with school kids, with college students, etc., etc. So the idea was that on the margins, I should start testing that is it something that interests me. That was the experimentative part of it.
I see.
So 5 days a week I would work for my firm. 2 days a week I'll do some consulting. I'll do things on the sidelines. And what I realized over a period of time is that I was craving for those 2 days.
Oh, okay.
And when you start craving for those 2 days, that is when you realize that this is where the calling in life is. Incidentally, this is the only college I applied to in India, because I had this very clear philosophy that if I stay back in India, Bangalore is the place. If I don't get through this place, then there is no point in staying back. I would rather explore other places. Luckily, I got through this particular campus. So that's been the journey. So it was not abrupt, not ad hoc, not overnight. It was well thought through.
Very
I
strategic.
discovered, yeah. On the hindsight, it sounds like strategic, but when I was doing it, it was sort of planned.
Right.
I wouldn't say destined, but it was sort of planned that I should experiment on the sidelines. Even today,
So you got lucky, and you also knew what you do with your luck.
exactly, exactly. That's the way you put it. You need to leverage on it.
Okay.
So plans following this, I think I would continue peddling on these three dimensions. I love to teach. I would continue teaching. I would try to see if some of my insights which I've gathered through my research percolates into the practice, that is through consulting. And the third thing would be to generate new insights through whatever information is available around, that is through research. So research, teaching and consulting is what I wish to do going forward. I don't know where I'll be, but this is what I want to do.
Amazing, amazing. Just this morning, I was like, we were in a discussion, and me, Joe Polish, and Dean Graziosi, these guys were doing an online session, and Dean was talking about with Joe, like they were talking about these three things, like people learn in three different ways. The first one was reading, the second one was doing things, like they learn by doing, and the third and most important and the actual real way of learning something is by teaching. So when you start teaching, you become more responsible. Like you don't want to teach something which is not going to work. So
Yeah.
you go back, research, and come up with your own twists and turns, and apply the knowledge and give it your perspective, and that becomes probably turned into wisdom that can be used. So that's what
Exactly.
I call wisdom. Maybe
Yeah.
your definition could be different. So that for me, knowledge with perspective and application, that's wisdom for me.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you most passionate about personally? Like, what do you do when when you don't have to work, or when you're not in campus, or a weekend? Something that you like to do personally.
Frankly speaking, I haven't had those many weekends after joining this program.
Okay.
This program doesn't give you that kind of a leisure time. Yeah, but to answer to your question, things which which are very close to my heart. One is that I'm generally a very curious person, right? So my curiosity takes me to various places, which could be in the city, outside the city. So I explore. I also like driving. So that's one of my hobbies, to drive long drives. Yeah, and of course reading. I'm a connoisseur of buying books, like the way people buy clothes.
Okay.
And because they can't wear all the clothes, I can't obviously read all the books.
Books.
But these books placed on my shelf is a constant reminder that I need to read those books, and I have no guilt of spending money buying books. So buying books, going for long drives, and exploring the nature are the three things which I enjoy
Do
the
you have
most.
any recommendation for the books that the viewers or us to read, that must read? What are the 1 or 2, 3 books that you recommend that people should read?
Okay, so this is the response to the question would be slightly offbeat. So the book that I'm going to refer to you strongly is nothing to do with innovation, creativity, strategy, or whatever else you have. I think the book is much more fundamental, which has helped me in enormous fashion. The title of the book is Man's Search of Meaning.
Man's Search of Meaning. Guys, take a hint here.
Man's Search of Meaning. So this is by Viktor Frankl, Dr. Viktor Frankl. Just to give you a perspective, Dr. Viktor Frankl is a Austrian psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. Okay.
Yeah, Austrian psychiatrist, and he's of the league of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was also Austrian.
Right.
So this gentleman, he is also a pathologist. He's a doctor by profession, so he knows mind inside out. He survived 4 concentration camps. He was a Jew.
Oh.
He survived 4 concentration camps by Nazis, and this book talks about the ordeal of this guy through these 4 concentration camps.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very small book, about 120 pages. That's it.
Okay.
It's a classic stuff. You can just imagine that. The manuscript of the book he started writing somewhere in 1930s, 80 years back, and they burned the manuscript. The moment the Nazis captured him, they burnt his manuscript. And in front of his own eyes, his entire family was killed. The only reason why he was not killed is because he was a doctor, and they needed a medical practitioner to treat the concentration camp inhabitants so that they don't die quickly. They can work till they die.
Right.
And through his book, he actually tells you that even in the gravest of the situations that you are in, when your entire life's possession, your family, your loved ones are being butchered in front of you, and people, your inmates, turn themselves into cannibals, how do you still continue to live?
Huh.
Right? So that's a very fundamental question. Why should you live? And that is where he talks about the meaning. That
Okay.
to live is your duty, but why to live? You need to find a meaning for that. And I think that meaning has to come from within. So that is where the title is, The Man's Search of Meaning. So that's one book. And if you want the second one, I think I'll go with The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck.
Road Less Traveled.
Road Less Traveled is also about 50-year-old book,
Right.
sold millions of copies. So Road Less Traveled also talks about how do you manage your life. So the way we, for example, the way we say prayers every morning, people do. Prayer is a recitation of few of the very fundamental principles in life and a reminder. So you can read prayer once in a lifetime and you can lead your lifetime because you know the prayers. But the reason you recite those prayers every single morning, if you do, if people do, is a constant nudging to ourselves that am I leading my life purposefully. So Road Less Traveled is a compilation, again written by a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst. So Road Less Traveled is a classic case where he has documented some of the very fundamental principles of living life in a meaningful fashion. So that's my recommendation of the books.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And it also like matches with the general discussion that we've been having of late, like especially with regards to business growth and finding meaning and finding purpose and this stuff. And Pavan, if you want to teach me something right here, can you teach me something, like whatever it is, whatever it could be, about innovation or whatever it is, one little thing that if you want to teach me, what would that be?
That's a tricky one. I wasn't prepared for this. Yeah. So let me ask you this question. The question is, now imagine this situation, right? The situation is that you are a teenage boy, okay? You fall in love with a girl, and these are engineering college days. So you want to get married to this girl. You decide to get married, and then you take this proposal to your parents. You ask the parents that can we get married, and they detest it. They say you can't get married.
They say no. Okay.
They say no. So after a lot of trial, they can't get convinced, so you elope with the girl. So you elope and you settle in a different city. So suppose you studied in Bombay, now you are in Bangalore, and there are no contacts with your parents or your in-laws and with both the sets of parents. Now you start setting up your own life in the city of Bangalore.
This is getting interesting.
You start setting up your own life in the city of Bangalore. So you struggle, you work for 8-9 hours a day in the office. Your wife stays back at home. Then she starts getting frustrated because there is no one to talk to. It's an alien city. So she also wants to do a job. So both of you start doing a job. You can't give each other that amount of time. Now over a period of time, what happens is that because you can't give each other that amount of time, you start regretting the decision of not listening to your parents, not being a part of the community, etc., etc. And that is where you start feeling pity about the decisions which you had made. Then again, this women start pitying the decision which she has made of, having a job and not staying back at home. Now, because they both are having a job and incidentally, excuse me, they can't be with each other for a long amount of time, they even don't get a good quality time. A lot of struggle, a lot of quarrels that happen. And they decide to have a kid. So finally they decide let's do family planning, and after 4 years of marriage they start doing family planning. Now they start, obviously it takes time, but they somehow could not conceive a child. So they checked with various doctors, etc., and after a lot of trial and error they finally surrendered to the luck and they said, okay, let's adopt a child.
Okay.
So they finally adopt a child. Now because they wanted a baby boy, they adopted a baby boy. Now this 1-year-old child, when the child comes to home, they actually want to provide the best environment possible to this particular child.
Right.
But because there was a constant bickering before the child came in, the bickering continues. Again they start wishing that wish we did not adopt a child because with us,
It's okay.
because with us possibly the child career is getting ruined. So they continue. They put this child to the boarding school at the age of 2. They said at least if the child stays away from us, the child doesn't get influenced by the toxicity that we have in the environment.
Got it.
Child goes there, child starts his own life, and then they start missing the child. Once again they start bickering about the decision of letting the child go there.
Okay.
Now if you look at this entire story, what happens is that every decision at the hindsight we can justify it as a good or a bad decision. But at that point in time when we take the decision, we have taken the decision with best of our abilities and the best of the knowledge that we have around us. So the message which I want to give you, and this is a mirror of what happens to most of us in most of our lives. So the message which I want to convey through you to the audience is that we need to learn 2 things in our life. Okay, the first and the foremost thing that we need to learn is our ability to forgive ourselves.
Right.
If we can't forgive ourselves for the gravest of the crime, we should learn the ability to forgive ourselves. Only then we can possibly think of forgiving others. There is no point in harboring those negative emotions for ourselves or for the others, because there is a cosmic way of things get taken care of. You don't play God, right? So you start forgiving yourself. And the second thing is that we should believe in ourselves that at that point in time when we took a particular decision, we took the decision with best of our abilities. So there is no point in regretting. So if you can minimize the level of regret in your life till your deathbed, that's what I call as a regret minimization framework. So every decision that you take, if it goes sour, let it be, because there are several other factors at play. It's not just your decision, so you can't blame yourself. There are so many things which are truly out of your control. So you need to regret, minimize the regret, and let it go and allow yourself to forgive yourself. That's very critical to be happy and contented.
Right.
It's very critical.
Wonderfully said. And it's so important. Like it's again comes back to the 3 things that's really interesting: forgiving and forgiving yourself first. That's so interesting.
Forgiving yourself
Yeah,
first.
that's
Very, very
That
critical.
makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And coming back to innovation, what would be your 1 or 2, 3 pieces of advice on to startups? Like how should they start even thinking about it? Because there are already not everybody is starting to doing a startup right now. Maybe they have this plan for the future. Maybe they are budding or wanapreneurs. They are not even entrepreneurs. So what would you suggest these people, like 1 or 2, 3 things? How exactly should people go about how to think about innovation? Let's not even touch upon doing. What is your take on how to think about innovation? Where should they go? What is their next step?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I have 3 advices apiece for the entrepreneurs and then the startup itself as a firm. So for the entrepreneurs, I have 3 pieces of advice. The first one is that these entrepreneurs need to broaden their horizon and have what I call as multiple affiliations, multiple affinities. For example, oftentimes what happens is that 2 engineers come together and they start a company because they want to make a great product, great in their mind at least, great product. But the moment the product is out, it fizzles out because it doesn't have a good design. They don't have the capabilities to understand finance. They don't know what to market. They don't know how to build a network, how to get consumers, and as a result it fizzles out. Which means that these guys are so good at one thing that they're absolutely miserable at anything else.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, that doesn't work. As an employee, it may, because somebody is hiring you for that particular expertise,
Yeah.
which is fine. But as an entrepreneur, you need to have a conversational knowledge and a working knowledge of lots of other things. So one of the things that they need to understand and they need to really invest building is a very sound understanding of multiple areas. Because for that one deep thing, you can always hire somebody else.
Exactly.
And hence, when you grow up the hierarchy, when you grow your firm, as you move up, you need to be able to appreciate the various people. And you can hire an expert. You don't have to be an expert. That's the first thing. Broaden your horizon of skills. That's number one. Number two is that there is no point in being secretive about your idea.
Exactly.
Because the simple reason that an error in Wikipedia encyclopedia gets corrected faster than a Britannica encyclopedia or an Oxford dictionary is because there are more number of eyes looking at that particular page, and as a result it gets rectified rather quickly. Same happens with Linux as compared to Windows operating system.
Right.
Which means that if I bounce off my ideas, you should at the first place not really fear if somebody can really take the idea to the market. Because if you are so poor with ideas that that's the only good idea which you had in your entire life, then I think you deserve that. And
Right.
always the premium goes to the people who implement the idea, right? It's never an idea per se, it's always execution, because the devil is in detail. The execution part is important. So that is what I mean by sharing your ideas, because when you share the ideas, you socialize with people, is when the ideas get meat, it gets strengthened. So having a broad horizon of skills, sharing your idea. Third thing about an entrepreneur, and which I strongly believe is a must, is that these entrepreneurs should identify an area where they are differentially better than anybody else. And I give you an example of momos.
Okay.
Now imagine this thing, momos, that
The
food,
tea,
yeah.
the eat.
If 5 years back, some student of IIM Bangalore would have done a market research of how many people in Bangalore would actually lap on to eating momos,
Okay.
he may not have found those many audience, because there is such a huge spread of lunch and breakfast available in this city, right from idlis to who's who,
Everything in between.
that nobody would lap onto a momo. So momo did not come basically from a market gap. Momos came because there were a few bunch of people maybe from northeast who were good at making momos. They thought that I make momos all the time in Darjeeling, why can't I make a momo here?
In Bangalore, yeah.
In Bangalore, they set up a small stall with a minimal investment to set up a momo stall. And today if you go around the city, it's dotted with momos.
Right.
Same happens with tattoos. 10 years back, if you went out talking to teenagers, would you like to tattoo your body? They would actually be horrified with this idea. Today, people are dying to tattoo their
Correct.
body parts.
Yeah.
So tattoos and momos are the examples of businesses which were not grown by the business requirement. They were not pulled, they were pushed.
Right.
Which takes us back to the fact that if you are an entrepreneur, your starting point need not always be what's the market gap, which is, I think, a flawed starting point. Your starting point should be, what am I best at?
Right.
What is that I can do better than anybody else in the market? It can be a very trivially sounding thing, like making a momo or making tattoos on the body. But if I am better than anybody else, and if I position myself, then straight away I have entry barrier. But if I find something which market is craving for, and I start supplying that, where is entry barrier? It will get crowded very fast, right? Same happens with Air Deccan. They were the first to come up with the low cost airlines, but they were sold out to Kingfisher, which itself got bankrupt.
Exactly.
The whole dream was, tarnished.
Right.
Whereas Indigo, which was a late entrant, which saw the market, Indigo realized that I am better at one thing, which is time management. And that's a USP, and that's perhaps the only profit making airlines that we have in the country. So the third important aspect for the entrepreneur is know what you are better at, differentially better at than anybody else.
Okay.
Now for the firm, the three takeaways in my opinion would be, the first thing about the firm is that you need to again increase your spread. Have a variety of people who would work across. That's the Google model. Now Google, by and large, you can still perceive as a firm which is a search engine firm, but that's not necessarily where they make all their money from.
Exactly.
Why should Google get into driverless cars or an Android operating system or Google Earth or glasses or whatever else you have?
Right.
They are trying to do multiple experiments so that tomorrow, what if Google becomes an automobile company? What if Amazon becomes a space launching company instead of a book selling company? Which is that if you don't mutate, the reason why human beings survive is because we mutate. Some of the mutations that happen in our body can lead to cancer and hence we die. But some of the mutations that happen in our body can lead to evolution,
Right.
and we can survive in a much more
In a better way.
and in a much more testing environment.
Right.
So the way human bodies mutate, and mutation is a quasi-random process. It's not completely random, it's a quasi-random, which means there are certain parts of the body that will mutate faster than others, like the brain circumference would, which means that the same has to apply for the firms. Unless and until I deliberately introduce experimentation in the firm, experimentation by hiring new types of people, people who may not have an immediate requirement in my firm, people who are more artistic, people who just like to look at things in colors. They might even have a maybe anomaly in the way they think. They may not fit into a coding requirement, but that's fine. Give them a space. Don't give them the misfits. Allow those misfits to be in your company, because these misfits will continuously nudge your people, the main people, to be doing things differently. If you shun them out, and we call this as a mean-centric firm.
Right.
If you look at a bell curve, there is a mean and there is a variance.
Correct.
As a startup, you should increase your variance, because this variance allows you to have those people who are the so-called outliers always available with you.
Right.
And what if one of these outliers becomes tomorrow's mean? So innovation hence is a mean shifting behavior. If you don't allow these guys to be there in the firm, you actually die a slow death, unless your objective is to sell out and cash. The second thing about startups, I believe, is that these startups need to understand how do I erect entry barriers. Even if when you start a business, the entry barriers or the barriers for someone to get into the business may not be there, but slowly and surely you need to erect those entry barriers. What I mean by those entry barriers is either you have, so there are three broad ways of erecting an entry barrier. One broad way is by having some intellectual property which is very much yours, which others cannot easily access. The second is by having a massive scale, so that there is no carrying capacity left in the market that anybody could enter, like this cafe over here.
Right.
This cafe serves coffee at 20 bucks. No cafe coffee day can come in this radius and make profit.
Exactly.
So just because it has a coffee price at that level, there is no legal obligation that only one guy can operate in this IIM campus. But there was a cafe coffee day which is shut down in IIM campus. Right across the road there was a cafe coffee day, shut down. That's called saturating the carrying capacity. So you saturate the carrying capacity, you have an intellectual property right. And the third thing is you become a moving target. By becoming a moving target, you actually continuously keep improving your products and offerings, so that someone is a perennial second to you. Right? So that's my second advice to you. And the third advice for a startup as an enterprise, so first was the mean shifting, second is erecting an entry barrier, and the third advice for a startup is to actually look out for having a very, very clear business framework, or what we call as a business model. You need to be identified with something very clearly, right? And that is where we look at specialization. So I strongly maintain that the future belongs to specialists and not so much generalists. And here is an anecdote to bring home the point. Imagine 20 years back, you needed a plumbing job done at your home.
Right.
Now there were no telephones, there were no yellow pages, there was no Google, of course. The only way you can find out a plumber in your locality is through word of mouth.
Ask someone. Yeah.
Right? Ask your neighbor that whom did he or she refer to. Now for this plumber, his probability of getting spotted would be higher, right? Whereas now, thanks to the internet, if I need a plumber, all I'll type is a plumber. And the probability of me hitting a plumber rather than a generalist and actually hiring a plumber is far higher, because all I need is a plumber. So what happens with the transaction cost coming down? If I need a software engineer for 2 weeks, I'll get a software engineer for 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be everybody under the sun. Which means that these startups should be identified with something very unique, right? Which again goes back to having an entry barrier, again goes back to having certain sort of a mean, right? So this unique identifier, that this guy is good for this particular thing. For everybody else, for everything else, I'll hire somebody else. But for this thing, this guy is inevitable. You can't be an also ran in today's environment, because also ran doesn't have much of a meaning. You can't even charge a premium. Right? So three things again: having an entry barrier, identifying people who are not the typical class and accommodating them, which is including the spread, and third is having a very clear identifier for yourself. So that's my take on it.
Wonderful. That was well said. And before we, Actually, I was like thinking when you are talking about these things, and especially the last part of what you said, being a specialist and being specialization, going towards it. What is your take on personal branding? Because nowadays I'm seeing entrepreneurs like they're coming out of their hiding from behind their business cards, like CEO of this company or chief officer of some company. They are coming from behind that and showing up with their faces as a face of the company. So, do you think that personal branding or something related to them coming out as specialists is that going to be important?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now, going back to the movie Revenant, right? Now, when you are in desperation, when somebody is in desperation, the only asset you have is yourself, right? So, we cannot live for long, too long, based upon the accolades which we have garnered through these institutes. We cannot, these accolades like an IIT or an IIM can get you a foot in the door at best,
Right.
can get you a margin of error
Mm-hmm.
or a benefit of doubt that okay, he has come through an IIM, so let him give us a chance.
Right.
That is at best. But the moment you start uttering something, these accolades do not help you at all.
Uh-huh.
Same applies to the brands where you work with.
Mm.
If you are a person at Google, the Google accolade is as good as your employment contract with the firm,
Right.
right? So it all goes down to atomization. With reducing transaction cost, people will get atomized. Atomized means individuals, right? Now, it might be a different thing that what you do as a day's job with a Google or a Microsoft or maybe less known brand, that is just your day's job. But outside of the brand and outside of the day's job, you need to have a personal branding.
So, what you can actually bring to the table.
Exactly. And this personal branding, without a doubt, has to be very, very legitimate. What I mean by legitimate personal branding is just because you have had so many years of experience, so many accolades under your belt, cannot substitute for your substance. That is what I mean by legitimacy, a very concrete, honest brand of oneself. And in India, though we are rather tentative and we are shy people, but I don't think that there is any reason why you should not promote yourself. Why should you not promote yourself, right? When a president runs for the president's election, he or she promotes,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
There is no shame in that because the lowest common denominator at the end of the day is you, yourself. So there is no reason why you should not express yourself and make others realize what you are worth. So there is no going away from the fact that future again belongs to specialists, and a specialist at the level of an individual. And if he or she doesn't have a, what I mean by brand is an identity. An authentic identity
Right.
is a brand,
Right.
right? Which means that every time I drink a Coke, every time I take a Colgate, I get the same experience over and over again. That is authenticity. That's what is the meaning of a brand. Which means every time I meet someone like Ram, I should have a prediction of an experience which I'll have with him over and over again. And this, if it is not factual, if it is made up, then I'll get to know in 2 or 3 times.
Exactly.
Right? And as you know, a great product not promoted lives longer than a bad product promoted.
Right.
Right? Which means the authenticity of the brand is a must, and I don't think people should shy away from that at all.
Wonderful. So, Pavan, it was so nice talking to you and picking your brain with such. It's a really very small amount of time to spend with you to learn everything that you have been researching and probably you can bring on the table. But that should be, we are so grateful for spending your time with us this evening. But if someone has a question or someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
So, I have a blog which
Okay.
is pavansoni.com. So, that is one avenue, and then of course I am connected on LinkedIn also.
Okay.
So, these are the
we'll
two
be able to
best
flash your LinkedIn profile and your
blog.
your
Yeah.
blog URL
Yeah.
either on the video or below this video. So if you have any questions and want to reach out to Pavan, and if he is available to answer
I'll
your
be happy
questions, he'll be happy. If he is not there, you can send your questions to me. I will route it through me, and I will try to get his answer before he flies out of India or of Bangalore. So if you have anything, we'll definitely reach out to you, Pavan. And thank you so much for being on this show. And it's so amazing to learn about your insights, your perspective, and the way that you articulated certain important things. And we not just got just 2 or 3 things, we got many things. I think we could make a big list of things that we got as a takeaway from you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Pleasure. Take care.